Hello everyone and Happy New Year or almost New Year. This is that week of the year where I lose track of what day it is, but it is the 29th, December 29th. So I have like 2.5 days left to get a few more books in before the end of 2023. I might get 1 or 2 more in because I'm like partway through a few, but I wanted to do a little recap of my reading in 2023. Right now I'm at like 46 or 47 books. Maybe I can make it to 50, but you know, right around 50-ish. And I tracked my reading in kind of an interesting way this year, so I thought we would talk about that today. If you're new here, my name is Megan. This is my channel, Too Cool for Middle School. We've been doing this for like 9 years or something like that. I have lots and lots of reading videos, book videos. This year I didn't do like monthly book reviews. This has been a busy year. I'm a teacher. I teach middle school. This year I was teaching 6th and 7th and 8th. I have some history, some English, and I also have 2 little kids, so I haven't gotten to make as much YouTube content as I like to do. I'm also a historian. The highlight of my year for sure was my trip to St. Thomas in the US Virgin Islands, where I was doing some research, and I also gave a lecture on Rothschild Francis, who was the topic of my master's thesis, and he's my husband's great-grandfather. So I got to do a little bit of family history and research, and it was just amazing, and I can't wait to go back. Oh, and also I love this sweatshirt with the little tulips on it. This is from Olive & Frank. I'm not sponsored by them or anything, but I just love their stuff. It has little matching sweats. They're so cute. Oh, and look back there. That's a little doll that I got in the Virgin Islands. I have a few new additions to the office area setup thing. Another one of my favorite things of the year, sorry, this is becoming kind of like a 2023 favorites recap thing, but I got a little ice machine. I had seen people like on Instagram getting ice machines, like little nugget ice, you know, for the past year or so, and I finally got one. It does melt quickly, like you can only kind of hear it now, but it's just so satisfying. And it does make me drink more water. It's so basic, I know, but I love it. Okay, so I've got my water, I've got my computer here. I tracked my reading through like a map this year. So people have different goals for reading, and whatever people like to read, I support all of it. Whatever, you know, genres or how much reading you like to do, or whether you like to do audiobooks or Kindle or any kind of reading, I think is good. BookTube in general leans very fantasy heavy, I find. Like those are the majority of the channels. And then also like on Bookstagram and Book Talk, a lot of the stuff is like Sarah J. Maas and stuff like that. I tend to read more like historical fiction, literary and contemporary fiction, and then nonfiction that is focused on history. So when I'm reading, my goal is to kind of like expand my schema. Like I want to understand more about the world. I want to understand more about people. I want to understand more about the past. But I was also thinking about just like location. So I feel like New York and London, England, you know, are very common literary settings. And so I didn't really have a goal necessarily to like read books from every country or anything like that. But I just wanted to see like, okay, in what I'm drawn to generally, where am I reading? Like I read books by a lot of diverse authors, but I was just like, okay, well, where are they set though? Like, am I really focused in the US? And yeah, I read a lot of books that were set in the US, but I just kind of wanted to see where the holes were. And so then like next year, I'll try to, you know, fill in some of those holes and just like get the perspective from different places. So I just got little graphics like off of Etsy and just, I have this on my computer. Okay, I've been keeping track for the year, and I did like a US graphic and then kind of just like the rest of the world graphic. It doesn't include South America in this particular clip art, but I have a couple that I just kept in like the United States section that were set in South America. So I'll talk about those. Let's just start with the US, I suppose, since this is where the majority of the books were set, and I think I'm gonna start on the West Coast and then move over to the East Coast and just kind of give like a really brief description of the books and where they were set and kind of what I thought about them. Not too much of a review. So actually the very first book that I read this year, I think this is kind of what like kicked off this idea, was, let me see, can I make this bigger? Goodness, it's so tiny. In the Distance by Hernan Diaz. I had read Trust last year, so I wanted to read more by him this year. I didn't enjoy reading this book. It's so weird and the setting is so weird. It is set just all over the West. It's just the West. You never even know where the main character is. For one, because this is kind of like pre-division of states out in the West. And also he's from like Sweden, I think, the main character, and he like he can't understand people speaking English or Spanish or whatever other languages they're speaking, and he never knows where he is. And so like it's a very disorienting book, but I felt like kind of the purpose of it was to like play with setting. It's a hard book to read, but I just kind of put that one like in the West. Didn't even really know where to put it, but now I don't know if you like that kind of a thing. It's an interesting book, but it's not like enjoyable. So anyway, we have that one like in the West. A non-fiction that I read that I just set in like Hollywood was Freaks, Geeks, and Dawson's Creek. Oh my goodness, I loved this book. It's non-fiction obviously, and each chapter is just about a different like teen show that was kind of groundbreaking in its own way. And all of these came out kind of like as I was coming of age, but also a lot of them I hadn't seen because we didn't like have those channels or whatever. So I've never really seen Dawson's Creek, although I think it's on Hulu. Almost all these shows were on Hulu. And so as I was reading the book, I went to Hulu and watched like at least the first episode or two of each of these shows. So it was really fun to like read about them and then like also go watch and see what they were talking about. So like Freaks and Geeks is so amazing. I kind of remember watching that show, but I got more into it, and then you get to like learn about kind of the history of like writing the show, like who wrote the show and why and what are they trying to portray, and you know, were they able to get the studios on board with everything that they were trying to do and what they were trying to showcase. And so Fresh Prince of Bel-Air I think is the first chapter, and then obviously Freaks and Geeks, Dawson's Creek, Glee. Oh, Freaks Gleeks I think is the title. Yeah, Freaks Gleeks, because Glee and Dawson's Creek. It just talks about so many interesting shows, and since they sort of like informed my view of like reality and like what life is supposed to be like in high school, and like even like when you grow up, like this is kind of like what parents and adults should be like. It was just very interesting to read about, so I highly recommend that one. I thought it was so fun. Up in the Pacific Northwest, I have Remarkably Bright Creatures. For some reason my West Coast is like pretty blank, and so I read that one specifically because I knew it was based in the Pacific Northwest. It's in Washington / a little bit in California. There's some like Modesto or Stockton, I think the guy's from there originally. And I really enjoyed this one. It has the perspective of an octopus, which was fine. People were like very tickled about that. Like I could have kind of done without the octopus, but then there's an older woman who works at an aquarium, and then this guy who's kind of down on his luck, and the stories intertwine. It reminded me of a Frederick Bachman book where there's kind of misunderstood people whose stories you don't really see how they could come together until they eventually do in the end. So I feel like it was a little bit less well written than a Frederick Bachman book, but still very well done and like a cozy read, and definitely one that I enjoyed. So I would recommend that one. Moving east into like Idaho is Four Treasures of the Sky. And this is another one that is set kind of during this post-gold rush era. So in the distance, yeah. And then Four Treasures of the Sky. They're both very like critical of what things were actually like, especially like post-gold rush era. Like, okay, all these people are here. There's a lot of violence. A lot of people from all over the world who can't necessarily understand each other. They just know that they want money, trying to take what everybody has, trying to get ahead. Very few women, and which makes them even more susceptible to violence than they normally would be. And then this one is specifically from the perspective of like a Chinese immigrant who was kidnapped from China and then brought to San Francisco, like trafficked there, and then kind of escapes to Idaho. I read this at the beginning of the year too, so some of the details are sort of escaping me, but this one was also very good. We go down into Utah. I have Tan France's memoir, Naturally Tan. It's always kind of hard to critique a memoir because it's just somebody's story. I don't really like rating memoirs. I'm just like, good for you. You told your story. So it was kind of interesting. I love Queer Eye and all the guys on that show. So it was interesting learning about Tan France's story. I listened to the audiobook, and there were places in the audiobook where they had clearly like gone back and re-recorded sections or like added sections with very different sound quality, and so that was just like annoying, but it was fine. It was interesting. It is very interesting to me how he ends up in Utah and like kind of gets his first start in the fashion world with like Utah Mormon mommy bloggers. I did not realize that. Let's go south a little bit to Mexico, and I have Loteria, which is, it's like a middle grades kind of fantasy, more like folklore book. And so if you have students who know like what the Loteria is and like the different cards, it's a little bit like tarot cards. I don't know enough about the nuances of everything to probably like have picked up on all of the details in the book, but I thought it was really interesting. Death was my favorite character in the book, and so it's one that I would add to like any middle school classroom bookshelf. Let's go north to Colorado. I read Woman of Light, again specifically because I was like trying to fill in this western part of the US. I was like, oh weird, I guess I don't read that much set in the West. So, you know, this is exactly what I was trying to see with this map and tracking my books this way. So yeah, Woman of Light is set in Colorado, and it's about Mexican women and indigenous women, and then oh gosh, I think their father is like French, I want to say, but similar to like Four Treasures of the Sky, In the Distance, you know, so you kind of start to see, this is why I liked doing it this way, like the different settings and like the similar themes that come up in these settings because they're influenced by a lot of the same stuff. So Woman of Light is kind of like historical fiction. It's set during like the Great Depression era in Colorado and traces, you know, several generations of women in, you know, what they call like the lost territory. Because again, these places don't even necessarily have names that everyone agrees on because everyone is like coming to them from a different area and with different names and with different histories and all this stuff. So it's very interesting to see how all the books about the West kind of tie together, but that one's really good. Moving down to Texas, The Making of Biblical Womanhood by, is it Beth Allison Barr? Yeah, so good, so amazing. I think I'm gonna do a separate video about all the books that I read that were kind of about like evangelicalism this year, and they were all written by women, and they're all from kind of like a perspective that I have, like kind of growing up evangelical and then, you know, learning a few things about the world and looking back at it. But highly, highly, highly recommend this one. She's a historian. She has her PhD in history. She's a history professor in Texas. So, you know, this one is a little bit hard to place because it's kind of set in like the medieval world and Mesopotamia, but when I had a situation like that, I usually just went with like the location of the author, and it's a little bit autobiographical. She writes about her own situation a little bit, and she lives in Texas. Jensen's being so loud. Hold on. Okay, anyway, that was one of my favorite books of the year, for sure. And then a very similar book. This one is partially in Texas, partially in, I forget where she's, Tennessee, something like that. Beth Moore's All My Knotted Up Life. So again, she's like a Christian writer and speaker. And she's like your classic, like blonde hair, blue-eyed, conservatively dressed, you know, pretty, thin, Christian woman, and she was part of the SBC, which is the Southern Baptist Convention, which like most churches are, and then kind of post 2016, which split evangelicals in a lot of ways. She ended up speaking out about the abuse within the Southern Baptist Convention and took a lot of heat for that, but also, you know, for people like me, I was like, go Beth. So it was really interesting to read her memoir. Let's kind of stick to the South here, I guess. Okay, another memoir. Britney Spears' memoir, I had to read that. It is so poorly written. Like the first paragraph, the first sentence is terrible. Like there's no parallelism in her sentence. Like I understand that she was so controlled that she didn't want like a ghostwriter coming in and like changing her writing. It's just her voice, and she is not an educated person. Like she was performing since she was a teenager, well really since she was a child, but then, you know, like kind of full time since she was a teenager, and really was just so focused on her music and her dance and her performing and touring and making records and everything. Like English class was not, you know, something that she had to really focus on. So I can forgive the bad writing because I did just like want to know the story. Like, don't we all just want to know the story? We've been seeing the weird Instagram posts and everything the past couple of years, and she was like very impressive. The only thing that I sort of like feel like is missing from the book is bragging about how good she was, because like when she would talk about the different like music videos or different songs that she was working on, I would just like go on YouTube and like watch those again, and I was like, oh my gosh, she was so good. She's a little bit older than me, so, you know, of course she's the person that like we were looking up to when I was in like middle school, high school, I guess. You know, we were listening to her music and watching her music videos and being influenced by her style and dance moves and everything. And so it's just really interesting to look behind the curtain and see what hell it was. I mean, I feel like every fairy tale kind of like preps us for this information and none of us believe it. Like, no, if I could just have all these clothes and all this fame and all this beauty, it would be fine even if I was trapped in this castle of paparazzi or whatever. But no, oh, to have her kids like kept from her in the way that her freaking K-Fed did and everything, and like you can kind of understand why she falls for these guys. She just did not have like a well-rounded, balanced life. I guess just like most pop stars don't. But yeah, it was an interesting read. I read it in like a day and then I gave it to my friend to read also. So like everyone's reading it. I recommend reading it. I heard the audiobook's even better. I maybe should have done that too. Okay, we're kind of still in the South here. House of Cotton. I really liked the cover and I saw it at this independent bookstore and I wanted to buy something from them. I didn't like the book at all. Like I kept reading, hoping that there would be some like aha moment, like, oh, this is, you know, what all this was meant to lead up to. And I think I get what the author was doing. This black girl whose mother has died and she really has like no one to depend on, ends up working for this guy who owns a morgue, funeral home thing. And then this lady who is like a makeup artist, and they kind of like turn her into people who are like missing or dead, and then like families will like Zoom with them and she'll act like she's the missing person or dead person or whatever. It's just like it's very weird. I didn't like it. Would not recommend. Conjuring Women, I really did like. This one is set in kind of like the nondescript South. We don't really know the state. And I don't know if that's maybe because it just doesn't matter to the people who are living on this plantation. This is like, well, it's interesting because there's two timelines, and one is like leading up to the Civil War and then one is just like post-Civil War. So it's a really interesting kind of like magical realism, historical fiction, looking at the situation like on a plantation where I don't remember enough of the details to like spoil too much for you, I don't think, but like the people in the big house die, and so then the people on the plantation who were enslaved are like still there and no one around them has really realized that yet. So they're kind of living in freedom, but they're also kind of like hiding from the world around them. So they're kind of not. But it kind of jumps back and forth between like full on enslavement and then like this weird time right after the war, or kind of like during the war too, like just other Southerners are busy with other things, I guess, to be too worried about what's happening with them. But one of the really interesting things about the book is there is one of these dolls. This is the one I got in St. Thomas that does this. Oh my gosh, this one is just so beautiful. One of kind of like the metaphors in the book, and on the cover of the book is this doll. She's actually white on one side and black on the other side. But yeah, kind of looks like this one. I love this one. She's so beautiful. But yeah, because like this girl who grows up on the plantation, whose mother works for, you know, the plantation owner's wife, she plays with like the daughter, who's a white girl. And so you see how like interconnected all of these people are. They all work together, they all live together, they, you know, these black women are raising the kids, cooking the food, oftentimes, you know, being raped by the husband and bearing their children. So like these families are even more intermingled than maybe like the wives would want to admit. Yeah, so it's very well done. I liked that one a lot. I'll let you read it yourself and I'll stop telling you about it. Okay, then the crossover. In the book, they don't say where this is set, but in the Disney adaptation, there's a series now. They set it in New Orleans, so that's just where I put it here. I loved the Disney version. I think they did such a good job. I watched the whole series several times because I watched it like with Jensen and with some kids at school. Like they would come in at lunch and we would watch episodes. It's great. The book itself is so good. It is a novel in verse, and I just love the way that he does like basketball sounds. It's just so poetic. I mean, that's the nature of a novel in verse, but it's so interesting. It's freaking heartbreaking. If you don't want your heart to be shattered, don't read this book, but I loved it. I thought it was so good. I need to read more by Kwame Alexander. Okay, let's see. Let's go a little further south for a second. Let's do Of Women and Salt by Gabriela Garcia. This one takes place in Florida a little bit and then mostly Cuba. I thought this was very good. Once I went on Instagram and started kind of like reading some more critiques of it, there were a lot of people who didn't like the way that she portrayed Cuban women. She is a Cuban woman, so I think there are some fair criticisms of it, but again, for me, it still like expanded my schema of what life was like in Cuba across, you know, several generations, and the options that people had there or lack of options. And I found it very interesting, but it is kind of a depressing book. I'll give them that. And then the History Smashers book, I just kind of put like, you know, in the Caribbean. This one is, can't even read it on the screen, but it's like Christopher Columbus and the Taino people. So I liked that this was a collaboration between Kate Messner, who writes all the History Smashers books, and then a Puerto Rican author who wrote like the Taino side of the history. And it's super readable. It's super interesting, just like all of them are. I always recommend the History Smashers books for parents or for teachers, history teachers especially. As an adult, you can read them and learn a lot. And then, you know, of course, as a teacher, you can use them in your classroom as well. So that one is great. Moving back up into kind of like the DC, Virginia area. Let's do that next. Okay, so Mascot was one of my favorite books of the year because our school is dealing with this issue of having a Native American mascot for our high school. So not my school, but our district has the Apaches as our mascot, which I am opposed to. And so this book is from the perspective of like 6 different people, and it's a little bit hard to keep track of them, but I like that on the inside of the jacket, they list who the different people are, like these different kids in a school. And so as you're reading their chapter, it's super easy to follow along and see who they are, like get that little remembrance who they are right there. And then everybody's story is in a different font, so you can kind of see the changes. And it's also a novel in verse. So there's a lot going on there. But it does show like all the kind of different perspectives of people and kind of what they have invested in these different mascots. So that's a middle grades YA novel, definitely recommend. Okay, Demon Copperfield is also set in this area. It's in Virginia. It's a Southern retelling of David Copperfield. Oh, sorry, Demon Copperhead, right? Yeah, Demon Copperhead, retelling of David Copperfield. So it's very long. It's Barbara Kingsolver. She Can Do No Wrong. This book is so amazing. I listened to the audiobook and the reader was fantastic. Thought he was so good. It's like difficult to read. You get so invested in this kid's story, and he just has such tragic, traumatic things happen to him constantly. And then it's a really sharp critique of the opioid crisis in small towns in the South as well. And there's also this overarching theme of like city life versus country life, and like where you're going to be taken care of better. Like maybe there are more resources in the city, but are your people there? And so I liked kind of like that tension. And so it's really, really good. One of my favorites of the year. Definitely recommend. Another Virginia book. I read this towards the beginning of the year, but We Are Your Children Too. The subtitle is Black Students, White Supremacists, and the Battle for America's Schools in Prince Edward County, Virginia. I think I saved like story highlights on Instagram reviewing this book. Every single teacher, like pre-service teacher in the United States, needs to read this book. It's about when schools shut down in Virginia following the Brown versus Board of Education decision. Rather than integrate schools, they just closed them and like did not operate public schools because they were so upset about integration. This one is really well written. P. O'Connell Pearson is the author. It's written at like a young adult level where I think this would be a really cool book study for students, but then like as an adult, if you read it, it'll be a pretty quick read for you, with still tons of research within it and lots of information. It's just so important to understand like what shapes our public schools and the history of our public schools. One of my favorites of the year. Set in DC, we have The Woman They Wanted, which I pre-ordered as soon as I heard that it existed. This is a memoir, I don't know, a book by the wife of Joshua Harris, who wrote I Kissed Dating Goodbye. And then she's the wife. She's the one who he married after he kissed dating goodbye. Who, if you have that same background as me, where you were like raised evangelical during like the 90s and 2000s, where like all of this was a really big deal. Like we all wanted to be her. Like we didn't really know anything about her, but like you wanted to be the one that like Joshua Harris would pick, and her life sucked. It was horrible. And it's all very connected to Beth Moore's story, and then like the making of biblical womanhood. Like she was on this pedestal as like this biblical woman, right? Whatever. They treated her like crap. Her life was awful. She's out of it now, and I'm so glad for her. Again, this book was a little bit like the Britney one, where it was like not incredibly well written, but this story is so important to know. And like, it doesn't matter, whatever, if it's not all well written. Like, let me just, for one, I wanted the tea. And then I was also just like, wow, look what we do to women in the church. My goodness. So yeah, we definitely need like a dedicated video on all those books put together. Yellowface is also set in DC. I love Yellowface. It is satire. It's like satire upon satire upon satire. So you've probably heard a lot about it. A lot of people don't like it, but it is about a white woman who finds a manuscript written by an Asian woman, a girl who was like kind of her friend, and this friend dies, and so the white girl like publishes it as her own, and it's a story that's about like Asian people. It's kind of like a historical fiction. And her mom was kind of a hippie, so her name was like Juniper Song, and so like song was just supposed to be like a song, like a pretty, sing song. But it kind of, she's able to sort of like pass literarily as Asian. And so it's just very interesting to have those conversations about like who gets to write about what. But then of course, like the irony is that this is a Asian author writing the whole thing from the perspective of a white author who is writing from the perspective of, or kind of stole the work of an Asian author. So it's really interesting. I thought it could have been shorter. I think it could have been like a short story, and like we would have still gotten the idea, but it's not very long as it is. So I liked that one. Okay, let's move into like the Midwest, I guess. White Smoke is a kind of like a horror story by Tiffany D. Jackson, who is such a good writer. I love Monday's Not Coming. Oh my goodness, that one kept me up until like 4 in the morning. Had to read and find out what happened to her. This one was okay. It was like not my favorite, but as like a class project, we were trying to read kind of all different genres, me and my students. And so one of the things that I don't read very often is like thriller or horror. So I thought I would pick up that one just to get out of my box a little bit, and it was okay. It was fine. My camera battery is dying, so let me charge this real quick and then I will be back. Okay, I got a little bit of a charge. Let's continue and I will go faster. You'll probably appreciate this too. Okay, so I think we ended with White Smoke, which is just like also like nondescript Midwest. I'm not sure which state. Okay, The Davenports, very, very good. Set in Chicago, if I remember correctly. And this one is set around the turn of the 20th century. It's based around an upper class Black family who, you know, like the parents had grown up in the South and now they're trying to provide a better life for their daughters in the North, and they're kind of like the elite. And so it's a really interesting YA love story, historical fiction, and I didn't like Bridgerton at all. I only watched the show. I would not waste my time with the books ever. But I feel like this is just like, this is kind of my version of Bridgerton. More worth your time, in my opinion. So love that one. I want to incorporate it into my 7th grade historical fiction unit, actually. Okay, what else we got? Jesus and John Wayne. I won't say too much about this because this one has to be included in the Beth Moore, Shannon Harris, Making a Biblical Womanhood, Beth Allison Barr video. But another one of my favorite books of the entire year. I started it a long time ago and then I just got on a roll with like all those other ones and it was amazing. I think she teaches in Michigan, so I have it up there. Mean Baby also I think was Michigan, by Selma Blair. It's her memoir. I listen generally to memoirs, and so I don't know, I was, you know, trying out that like Libro FM app, and so I don't know, it's just like a fun way to listen to books. I kind of enjoy memoirs on there. This one was good. Selma Blair has MS and so does my mom, so I just wanted to hear a story from someone who, you know, is working through that and living with that and just kind of like get, you know, some insight. So I liked it. It was good. Tom Lake I just finished, and that one's also set in Michigan. And it is an homage to Our Town. So I also watched the play Our Town as soon as I finished that one so that I would kind of like understand it better. So I would recommend like watching Our Town first, or like being familiar with it and then reading the book. Very cozy, set during the pandemic, but in a very cozy, we're all at home and have time to like share stories type of a way. Who to F Are You? Also set in Michigan, Dearborn, Michigan, about a girl who wears hijab. So, you know, she calls herself hijabi. She's in high school. She's got like 3 sisters or 4 sisters. They all kind of have a thing. She's kind of trying to figure out her thing. It's a graphic novel. Loved it. There are several more by the same author, kind of in the same like series sort of thing. So I want to get all of them. Okay, Pennsylvania, we have the Heaven and Earth grocery store. One of my favorites of the entire year. I will make a favorites video, but you know, spoiler alert, this is going to be on there. I love James McBride. This is about a community in kind of a poorer, rural community outside of Pittsburgh. There's a Jewish section of the community and a Black section of the community, and they don't really completely trust each other, but they also have to rely on each other. And it talks a lot about like, it, you know, just has themes of like disability and anti-Semitism and anti-Blackness and the perceived but not real safety of the North in, again, like, well, this is when is this one set? The 30s. So just before like World War II. Loved it so much. True Biz, another one of my very favorites. This one is set in Ohio. It's set at a school for the deaf, and it's mostly about these teenagers. So like, it's like different points of view, and all the chapters begin with like, if the character's name starts with an A, It's like a sign language A. And then another character is hearing, but she's the principal of the school, and she's obviously fluent in sign language. I believe like either her partner is deaf or her mother. I think her mother is. So she's been in that community for a long time. It's a little bit like YA because so many of the characters are in high school. One of my favorites of the year. It kind of was the catalyst to get me to take ASL lessons over the summer with Language Priority. You can follow her on Instagram. And so I really want to continue with that when I have more time. Moving in, we're kind of in like the Northeast now. The Cartographers, this was a New York one. We have quite a few in New York. I mean, just a lot of books are just set in New York. It's just a great setting. The Cartographers. One of my students actually recommended this one to me. I have them make these little like bookshelf kind of graphics of all the books that they read throughout the year, and I end up getting a lot of great book recommendations that way as I'm like grading their stuff. So she had specifically written in her like review of it that she thinks I would like it, and so I got it and read it, and I did really like it. It's like a mystery, very kind of academic, and a really fun, you know, a lot of maps, and there's like some magic in it. It's very fun. I like that one a lot. Family Lore, also set in New York City. This is Elizabeth Acevedo's gift to all of us adults who have been reading her YA stuff, which is great, but then this one's just like straight adults, like contemporary fiction about a Dominican family, you know, kind of across the generations. A really, really good one. Not for kids, but very good. Two more in New York that are for kids or like YA. Suspended. This is one of the Miles Morales Spider-Man universe ones by Jason Reynolds. It's really cool because every other chapter is in verse, and then every other chapter is just like regular prose. So it's kind of an interesting one. Some of your reluctant readers might like it. Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's like, man, I don't know, 4 stars, 3.5 stars for me. Like, I was hoping for more action, but you know, it's a cool one. And then Between Two Moons was really good. And I would say maybe this is more like new adult. You know how that's kind of a category as well. Like there's young adult, but then like new adult. I would say that this one is a little bit more new adult. It's set during like Ramadan. And there are these, I think they're twins or sisters, I think twins. They're Egyptian American, they're Muslim, and they live in New York. They've just graduated from high school. They have an older brother who is actually coming back home after spending time in prison. And so they are like learning to readjust to having their brother there. And it's just a really, really interesting book. I liked it a lot. Okay, moving into my like global section here. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, again, we'll just like, well, let's start in the East this time. Okay, so East. I only read one book set in China, which I feel like is weird for me. Forbidden City. I did not like it, and I feel bad because I started it and I did like it, and then someone like messaged me on Instagram and she was like, oh, this book gave me the ick, and I was like, really? I really like it. And then as I continued, I was like, no, you're right. So whoever that was, I agree with you. It's historical fiction, but also kind of like speculation. Like the main character is like a concubine of Chairman Mao. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've just read a lot of other books set during this time that I liked a lot better. Wild Swans. I would say Wild Swans is a million times better. Even like Little Gods. Yeah, I prefer both of those. I didn't really like this one. And then 2 set in India and 1 kind of half India, half Pakistan. So let's start with Age of Vice is in northern India. I read this at the beginning of the year. It's very, very good. It's definitely a page turner. It's a thriller. It's really, really long. There's like a murder mystery, but it's also exploring like the extreme gap in wealth in India and then Nepal as well. I think we go back and forth kind of into Nepal. It's kind of about like politics and wealth and caste, and just very, very, very good. I highly recommend this one. And then another really long one set in India, but in southern India in like Madras. I just finished this one. This is, I think, the longest book that I read this year, Covenant of Water. And it's just a beautiful book. It covers like 3 generations of women in India, but they all I guess all the women have kind of like married into the family. And there's also kind of like a curse, like a family curse that follows this family. And in the end, it is solved, and it's actually solved through science, which is great. I feel like that just doesn't happen very often. Like we'll get those things and it's like magical realism, but in this case, it's like they just figure it out because a lot of the characters in the book are doctors, and the author himself is a doctor, and he, you know, works at Stanford, but then he writes these epic, beautiful books in his spare time. So I highly recommend that one. And then The Night Diary, a lot of people have read. This is a YA or like middle grades book. I think it's a novel in verse too. Oh, maybe not novel in verse. She's like writing, oh yeah, The Night Diary. She's writing diary entries. But it's about the partition between India and Pakistan. And something that makes that even more interesting to me right now is learning more about the history of Palestine and Israel, because this happened at the same time. This was the same year, you know, also like instigated by like Britain and just like separating people by kind of like ethnicity and religion. So I think this is something that I need to take a closer look at. And like in history classes in general, I just feel like we need to look more closely at this. This is kind of an afterthought. So I like that one. Kind of along those same lines then, I also read Habibi. So Habibi is set in Jerusalem in the 1990s. And I think that it's kind of like autobiographical from Naomi Shihab Nye. She also writes very beautiful poetry and short stories that are often in like textbooks. And so that was how I originally learned about her. Whenever we have like a short story or a poem in our textbook, I usually like Google that author and try to find a longer work by them and like get a better sense of their writing. So I'd had this one for a little while. And her mother, like the story of the girl in the story and the author, her mother is white, father is Palestinian. They move to Jerusalem in the 1990s, and it's just a really interesting look at Palestinian people there. And she makes this Jewish friend, and then also the Armenian people there. I didn't realize there was also like a large Armenian population in Jerusalem. And again, with my schema, I am just trying to fill my brain as much as possible with as many perspectives and as much information as I can about what is occurring in Palestine right now. It's a war, it's a genocide. That's what's occurring in Palestine right now. Moving into our like Europe section, we'll go into Germany. Chyros. Okay, Chyros was like the hardest book that I read this year, just like reading level wise. It's just very difficult. So it's set in East Berlin as right around the time that the wall falls. So the main character is like this, she's like 19 and she's dating this guy who's way older. He's like 50 or something. And he's an academic. Everybody in their world is like an academic or a scientist or like a artist, you know, a writer, and their lives are propped up fairly well by communism in East Berlin. We hate the relationship between the two. Like it's very toxic, it's very horrible. It's all a metaphor. But I don't know enough about like the culture and the history in Berlin and in Germany at that time to like pick up on everything. And it was just very challenging for me. Like it was a challenging read, and I like to give myself that every so often and just start to like build that schema, because I don't really have a lot in there about this time period or like Berlin in general. So like then like the wall falls, and now all these people who were like academics and artists can't really be that anymore, because that doesn't work in a capitalist society. So it's, I don't even know if it's much of like a commentary on like capitalism versus communism, but it's just like showing the difference between what life is like for people, during like the late 80s and early 90s. Yeah, but the majority of the words in the book are about this horrible relationship, and it just is like awful and you hate it. And so it represents something. I don't know what it represents. Okay, Lady Sapiens. I just said that it's set in France. The authors are French. This is like a translated edition, and it's a book about anthropology and like women in prehistory, like the Stone Age. And it was really interesting to read. This is something that I have to teach that I don't understand very well because prehistory is not my thing. I need text. And so I was glad to read a book about anthropology. I never want to be an anthropologist. That work is way, way, way too hard. But if you teach like 6th grade history, like ancient history, I recommend this to kind of like wrap your brain around anthropology and prehistory. And it's also just a reminder that like we did not have the same gender roles way, way, way back then as we do now. And so much of the things that we assumed about people in prehistory are probably not true. Okay, Sweden. Yes, I think that was in Sweden, right? Beartown. I read the first 2 books in the Beartown series. I need to read the 3rd one, Winners. I will get that soon. So I read Beartown and Us Against You. With Frederick Backman books, I always like started off like, I don't really know if I'm into this. Like, you're just kind of like meandering through. You're not really sure how all these characters are connected, and then they start to come together and you're like, oh, and then you love it by the end. And it has a lot to say about small towns, a lot to say about sexual abuse, about believing victims, about the repercussions of like sports and, you know, kind of just like letting boys get away with anything if they're a good athlete. And then just like what that does to them, to their victims, to their families, to their team, and it's really, really good. So I loved Beartown and Us Against You. And then I have 3 set in England. We said England is, you know, a common setting for literature. One is another memoir. So what's his name? Tom Felton? The Draco Malfoy, Beyond the Wand. This one was just interesting to like hear about his experience with like the Harry Potter movies and then his life after that. Again, it's so hard to rate memoirs. It's like, if you're interested in that, then it's interesting. If you don't care about him, then you wouldn't care about this. I don't know. It was fine. A Cuban Girl's Guide to Tea and Tomorrow. This was interesting too. This girl is like Cuban American. She's from Miami, and then she goes to like a breakup and is like just not doing great right after she graduates from high school. So her parents send her to live with family in England. She's a baker. It's a romance. It is not my usual cup of tea. But it's fine. It's a cute one, like for a high school classroom for sure. Like teenagers would like this. It was fine. Okay, and then Wayward, I just finished. This one, it's listed as historical fiction on Goodreads. It's not historical fiction. It's just like contemporary fiction, but there's 3 different plot lines, 3 different like timelines. One is 1619, one is 1949, one is 2019. And all of these women are like related, and you just keep switching from one point of view to the other. And it's very bingeable. I read it in like 24 hours. There's a lot of like witchy history kind of in there, and ultimately it's really about like reproductive rights and like domestic violence and the power that women have that men are very afraid of. And so they try to make them feel small when really women have all of this power, you know? So it was good. I think like the themes in it are kind of why it won a bunch of like Goodreads best of awards and stuff this year. So I wanted to check it out. I liked it a lot. And then finally, Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is also set mostly in England, a little bit like in China. Do we ever get out of China? Not really. I don't know. The Atlantic Ocean. So it's set at Oxford. I think this book was written specifically for like people like me who liked Harry Potter growing up. We got into the whole like fantasy, and like we love, you know, something set at like a school like Oxford or Hogwarts or whatever, but we, you know, boo J.K. Rowling, and we want more from our fantasy. Like, can we bring in more themes about the world? So this is like speculative fiction, so it's kind of historical fiction, but it's like as if there were these gold bars that are like activated by different languages, and that's how England gains all of its wealth and power around the world and like enslaves other people. Okay, and my battery is about to die, but it's just like so amazing, and I love it. And there's more about all of these on my Instagram, and I'll make some more videos coming up. And yes, this is about to die, so thank you for being here. I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Happy New Year.